great job. They're here tonight for a joint hearing. So with that, I call meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And tonight, I think I remember him. Your name was Horace Ferguson, pastor at the United Methodist Church, a great friend, and he might forget this, so I'll tell you. In 2003, he gave the invocation for this building. Remember?
Right.
Yep. You're on, sir. Thank you.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Come now, Holy Spirit, heavenly dove, with all of thy quickening powers. Renew afresh that flame of sacred love with these humble and waiting hearts of ours. And, O God, now assembled in this place tonight, allow your presence to sway this meeting, that your presence will assure that the needs of this community are graciously and faithfully served. That presence that prompts our vision and reasoning, that both may be raised above all barriers dividing and splintering us from one another. Thy presence, which prompts wisdom to honorably deal with all citizens and related town issues. Thy presence, allowing us to serve rather than seeking to be served. Awaken us the desire to seek your way in serving you and all within Holly Springs community. And now, O Lord, grant us your intimate presence in this place. Bless and accept the work of this council and of our town staff here gathered and scattered. We humbly welcome and honor your presence and bless your holy name forever. Amen.
Good words. Thank you, Pastor. Item number 4, adjustment approval of the January 7th, 2020 meeting agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the January 7th, 2020 meeting agenda. We do have one change to request item 9H from the consent agenda to new business.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5 is a public comment period, and just a reminder, it gives the people the opportunity to give public feedback, suggestions, and requests to the council. Don't expect action at this point in time from the council. Topics requiring additional information will be referred to the town manager or appropriate staff, and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. If someone is going to say something that you already heard from somebody else, you may pass. With that, we'll open the public comment period and go to Christine Walworth. Walworth, did I get it right? I had some help. Hi, Christine. A reminder, just name and address again.
My name is Christine Wallowers, 324 Covenant Rock Lane. Hi. So I really am just here kind of spur of the moment to just bring something to light for the council to take into consideration. I live in the Holly Glen neighborhood, and there's quite a few projects that are slated right now on the map, and so I wanted to just bring your attention to a few things. Where Holly Glen is located off of Avent Ferry, we all know there's a lot of construction going on, a lot of neighborhoods going on, and it's a very highly traveled area, and that is also accentuated, if you will, with the school traffic, right? So we have the intersection with Castle and 55 right there. So what's being proposed right now is there are 2 lots at the top of Holly Glen, which we know will be developed. There's the 23 townhome proposal with a 11,000 square foot commercial building, I guess. And then the other lot is for another 18 townhomes with 6,400 square feet of commercial. Those enter and exit onto Cape Side or Shore House, which is a road within the neighborhood. So that'll be adding some traffic. Directly across the street from the entrance to Holly Glen is a nursery school, the Children's Lighthouse Childcare. It's an 11,000 square foot facility going in. There is currently no public hearing slated for that project. And I just want to quickly tell you, with Primrose being right at the top of our neighborhood, lovely school, but whenever there's a Mother's Day, Father's Day, last day of school, any type of holiday, we now have both sides of Avon Ferry congested with parked cars, and all the way down Holly Meadow into our neighborhood and all the way down Cape Side. The last event, I stopped counting at 125 cars. We are now proposing to put a second nursery school directly across the street from the neighborhood entrance and diagonal from that nursery school. And nursery schools historically don't have a lot of parking spots because they don't normally need them. So we're now potentially looking at adding maybe another 100+ cars on the same days for the same event. So I think that's something we should seriously consider. And because there's no hearing for that, I just want to make sure you're aware of it. The biggest concern here is just the traffic. Okay, and I know that there is the proposed widening that will be coming up. There is a meeting, but that stops right at Cass Holt, and then we go right back to the 2 lanes. So this is sort of an ongoing thing that I know we're going to have to be working on for years to come, but those particular projects, I just want to make sure that we're taking a good look at those.
Okay,
That's all.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next and last, Frank Galui. And again, please remember name and address, please. Love your hat.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm retired from the Army, been here for 13 years, and I have to face the worst intersection in Holly Springs almost on a daily basis, and that's Smithfield Mill Drive. They have made that street so bad down there that if you're in the daytime, it's okay, you can see it. At nighttime, you can't see the curve where the big hole is. They keep on making a big hole there with the tractor trailers coming around from the dump. When you want to go to the 5:40 in the morning, you might be faced with 25 cars in a line on Smithfield Drive because they can't get out under to the expressway there because it's traffic doing 65 miles an hour. Now, it's all right in the daytime, but come around at nighttime here, they can at least put 2 solar lights up there and maybe put some solar lights in the ground so you can see where you're going at nighttime. That's it.
Thank you.
That's my comment.
What?
And by the way, at 6:30 tonight, they announced the news that rockets are flying. So pray for our soldiers, please. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
We'll check into that. Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing and go to agenda item 6A, which is the Happy Holidays Parade recognitions, and that would be me for a minute. We're going to have a few people come forward for recognition. And at this point in time, I'm going to walk down the podium. Okay. I would like to call Tim Congleton up, please. I think he's here somewhere. Clear in the back. You got it, Tim. And you are. Well, just so you might know, and I think you do, we held our first parade in 1981. Tim first announced the Holly Springs Parade in 1994. You were 15 or 20 then, I think, right? Right. And he's done this every year since then. His commentary and humor, usually to me, or toward me, has become a tradition in Holly Springs. So at that point in time, he's indicated this will be his last time to do it this year. So I, Dick Sears, Mayor of Town of Holly Springs, North Carolina, am hereby honored to recognize and celebrate Tim Congleton You're a good man. And I hesitate to do this because I know it pretty well. Would you like to say a few words?
I only tease Dick because he's such an easy target.
Yeah, true.
I want to thank the town of Holly Springs. You know, I moved here in 1990. I married. That's what brought me into the area. I live down Avent Ferry Road. I've watched the growth in this town. It's been an amazing growth period, and there's still so much left to grow with. And I know it's difficult, and we all get upset. I mean, my goodness, I get upset. I do want to tell one quick story. My first visit with Mayor Sears here is I came with my mother-in-law and my wife because we went to a thing here at town, and they had these posters up of their kind of future vision of Holly Springs. And circling my pond down on the family farm was this little outline, and it said Future Park. And so any of you who might have known my late mother-in-law, the fire was lit and it was unquenchable. And so we brought her down here, and Dick did such an amazing job of kind of diffusing things. He listened to it, and he said, and he finally explained, he said, this is a dream. This isn't set in stone. This is something that we'd love to see one day, but we won't force it on. And she was calm, so we were calm. And so the growth has been terrific because I have to tell y'all, despite our complaints with traffic, and I live right where they're talking about, you know, having the issue. Despite the traffic and everything else, you can't imagine just how wonderful it is to within 2 to 3 minutes being at a grocery store, being able to buy gas, seeing a doctor, getting medications. I mean, going to a movie. I mean, who ever thought you'd go see a movie in the town? Oh, well, those of you who have been here of recent, you can't imagine this, but those kind of things were totally unimaginable, and it's here now, and it's wonderful. And so I have to remind myself to temper myself sometimes in my response to some of the things that this wonderful, august group does as they're leading our town. But I just want to thank y'all for everything you're doing. I want to thank everyone who served before then. One of the reasons I've enjoyed doing this parade is because this is such a great place to live. And if you don't believe it, move away for a little while and you'll want to come back. Thank you, Mayor. And thank y'all.
To summate, he said, we're trying to build a town where nobody has to leave unless they want to. And it's just about there. The hospital's not too far away. Next, I'd like to call up Joe LaFaro. Hi, Joe. Some of this has already been, but producing a parade requires a skillful coordination of many people, many organizations and departments. Since 2009, the Kiwanis Club has been an active sponsor of the parade. And whereas, I got to do one whereas, the Kiwanis Club provides many volunteers on or before parade day. As president, Joe LaFaro has donated many hours, and you know this, to the parade. Therefore, again, I, Dick Sears, Mayor of Holly Springs, am hereby honored to recognize and celebrate Joe LaFaro and the Kiwanis Club of Holly Springs. And Joe, I know you want to say a few words too. Am I right? And this is the proclamation. You're on, partner.
It was, do we have any other Kiwanis members? Probably not because it was short notice, but really can't do it without all our members as well. But we're happy, and it's a pleasure to work with the town and have the opportunity to support the parade. As you all know, it's a wonderful event, and it not only it's an opportunity for us to provide, volunteer, but also the key clubs that we sponsor, in service and so on. So, and that's about creating leaders, young leaders and leaders that will grow in our community. But I want to thank you for this honor, but it all goes to all those volunteers.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's one more. I'm not sure this young lady knows this, but could Tamara Ward please come forward? Is this a surprise? Uh-oh. Well, this parade requires the skillful coordination of many people, organizations, and departments. Tamara Ward has displayed great powers of organization, coordination, and grace under pressure. The 2019 Happy Holiday Parade was one of the best and most smoothly run parades in our history. So therefore, I, Dick Sears, Mayor of Holly Springs, do hereby, I'm honored to recognize and celebrate Tamara Ward. Thank you.
I'm in communications, so I guess I always have something to say. Right. Wow, this is such an honor. I'm shocked, and thank you very much for thinking to recognize me like this. But I just feel like it's above and beyond, because I feel like I'm just doing my job to the best of my abilities, and I'm only able to do that because I have such a great team to work with. And that's, I guess I mean that in two ways. I mean that as my communications team, Cassie Hack and Mark Andrews, you guys are phenomenal. You lent your creativity to the parade, you lent your sweat, you picked up some of my work so I could focus on the parade more. You helped me out during a stressful time, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your help and your support in being your teammate. I'm honored. And I also mean, like, this proclamation, it really doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the dozens and dozens and dozens of people who came together, both from inside government to inside our community, who came together to make the parade such a success. And I'm so happy that Joe was here, that Tim Congleton's here, and that they were recognized. But so many people came together to make this happen, from police with Captain Patterson, Public Works, Parks, just so many people. And this is just truly an honor. And I guess I'm surprised and shocked and nervous. And I just want to say, while this means a lot to me, what means the most to me is just being able to do something every day that I'm passionate about, which is communications, and being able to do it for the community that I love, which is Holly Springs, is my home. So thanks.
Let's give her a hand. One thing that Tamara didn't say. During a parade like this, there are several last-minute changes. And usually, it's a problem. It was not a problem for Tamara. Well, I can do this. I can do this. She's a can-do. We talked about this a couple meetings ago. She's a can-do person. We appreciate that. So congratulations again, Tamara. Okay, what's next? Agenda item 7A, launch and request communication, launch Holly Springs update. Bob Schimmel, who is Launch Holly Springs. Come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Bob Schimmel, 261 Elm Crest Drive, and I have the privilege of being part of the leadership team for Launch Holly Springs. And tonight, if you hear us talk about LHS or launch or things, it's just the vernacular of how we work. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, but I want to take a moment and thank the council and all the town leadership for all the support they've given us over the last 2 years. That's been very instrumental in the success that we have had. Tonight, we want to help answer some critical questions. One, is Holly Springs an entrepreneurial community? Two, what's happened with the cohorts that we've had, the first two cohorts, which is the fall of 2018 and the spring of 2019? is related to what's happened to those businesses and how has it impacted economic development. We just completed our third cohort in the spring, the fall of 2019, and we're going to look at that in a very broad sense as far as what the economic impact. One of the things that's been asked of us is, how is Launch helping support the community overall? And last, I want to share with you a little bit about what our plans are for 2020. Let's see if I can get this to move. Good. Launch Holly Springs, for those in the audience that don't know what we do, is a community-based program chartered by our local Rotary Club dedicated to supporting underfunded and or minority women entrepreneurs to build successful businesses to support our overall local economy. This community that we talk about is not just, it's a combination of 5 groups. It's the town people working with us, it's the chamber people working with us, it's the co-working station working with us, it's Wake Tech, who does a tremendous amount, and I'll talk about that in a second, and also the Holly Springs Rotary Club. Now, how do we do this program? We basically do it with a 4-part program. 1, we offer 10 weeks of intense business skills and training for the cohorts. That program is offered free because they are given a scholarship from Wake Tech. And Wake Tech, and Katie back there, thank you for all your help and support. Secondarily, as a business, you can't run a business in a closet, I talked about. You really need to be in the community and being available and talking to people. So we provide networking opportunities, and particularly for Shantae and the chamber, they've done a great job in helping us get our people in the community. We provide 6 months of complimentary mentoring with an experienced entrepreneur following graduation. Why is that important? Because statistics will tell you that a business that has mentoring has 5 times the probability, of 5 times the rate of success than a non-mentored business. And last is that we provide access to microloans. One of the questions we want to talk about tonight is Holly Springs a hotbed for entrepreneurship? And how we track that and how we learn that comes from when we look at the state new business registrations within the state. It's a database we can access. So historically, if you look at 2017, there were 230 new businesses created by Holly Springs residents. In 2018, that number grew to 314. The data is just coming in, but right now we forecast for 2019 that number will be approximately 325 new businesses registered with the state. Here's what's really interesting. We look at the number of registrations based upon the population of a city. And if you look at Holly Springs on a per capita basis, it has one of the highest incidents of new business registrations on a per capita basis. It answers the question that Holly Springs is truly a hotbed for entrepreneurship and launches the right program to help these businesses succeed. So one of the strategies we took this year is to go back and survey our first 2 cohorts from the fall of 2018 and the spring of 2019. So about 90% of those people responded. They were represented by 32 businesses. And interesting, each and every business that was in those 2 cohorts met our requirement of either being underfunded and or a minority women-owned business. Of those cohort businesses, 50% are existing businesses, 16% new startups, and 34% were ideas. Now, just to give you some background, when we vet somebody in our interview process, we really look to see how valid and how viable is their business. We turned down about 40% of the people who had ideas in the fall because they really didn't feel they were far enough along in their business plan. So we invest our time and energy on those people that we feel have the highest probability of having a successful business. So to date, 100% of the existing businesses are still in business. 80% of the new businesses are still in businesses. And 72% of the ideas have or plan to launch their new businesses. Why is that important? Because statistically, we know that almost 50% of new businesses fail in the first year. So when you look at our success rate, we say Launch Holly Springs is helping to make a difference in the success of the businesses. We've also looked at the economic impact. 2 brick and mortar businesses have been established. You all recognize our Moments in Time across the street here, and also Parents Chocolatier over in the Bass Lake Shopping Center. There are 5 more of those cohorts who are planning to build a brick and mortar in this town. 7 have opened new businesses in other places. 1 owner has expanded his businesses, and 2 others have moved out of a home office into an office now they can be more professional for running their business. To date, 5 launch businesses have hired 7 employees, and we expect more and more to be added as they grow their businesses. We look at all 3 of our cohorts that we've had. They represent 48 businesses, 52 members. We tried to look at when we do our evaluations at the end, we asked them, what is your potential for your business with the cohort? So we combined the survey from the 1 and 2 and the potential from the 3rd cohort. And I'm just going to summarize for brevity, but we expect to still have 2 existing brick and mortar businesses, 17 now that plan to have a brick and mortar or are using rental space to promote their business. Another one this year is expanded. It's gone into a expanded space. We've had 4 more businesses that are going to hire. So we have a total of 9 businesses that are going to be hiring Holly Springs residents in this town. And lastly, I want to share a story about human care providers. In our cohort, we have people who have businesses who are not there to make money. They're there to care for people. We have people that are cancer coach, a traumatic brain injury, people who have trouble sleeping, and they'll have a business and it helps them be more successful. This group of individuals is really helping members in our town in a very special and unique way. And I'm going to speak for all of us and tell you, I'm very, very proud of those people and what they've done. So one of the questions we get asked, and we got asked when we put in our grant last year, is what is Launch doing to support the community? For example, we can report that in 2018-19, we were all part of the MLK Walk. This year, we were participants as marshals for the torch run done by the Special Olympics. We had volunteers at Hollyfest, and we had volunteers at the half marathon. But we also encouraged our members graduates to be more involved in the community. Several have joined our Rotary Club. One has joined the Park and Recs Board. One of the cohort graduates will be an ambassador to the Chamber this year. And we've had several of those cohort graduates become part of our Launch Holly Springs leadership team. But they're also involved in supporting key community events. Our members have contributed to Make Smile. They contributed recently to the Grapes Grants and Giving Program put on by the Chamber, local PTAs, and other fundraisers. And lastly, we're going to talk about what do we plan to do in 2020. As you know, we received a grant from the Development Corporation. And one of the things that we have found in the surveys and talking to our prior cohorts is that they still need more information and more training for them to be successful. So what we are going to be doing is in the spring launching a series of monthly sessions led by industry-specific professionals to help cohorts and other small cohort graduates and other small businesses learn and enhance new skills. So there will be a 2-hour seminar on social media. There's going to be one on accounting 101, and we just have a whole plan together that's gonna run for the first half of the year. So what we're gonna do with that money is help reinforce the small business development community in our town to help them be more successful. We've also started with an evaluation with the Chamber's new Community Alliance program, and I will report to you tonight that actually in our meeting today, we have decided to be part of that. And that is a new initiative focusing on promoting world-class education and workforce development within our town. That's going to be a great program that's going to make a great difference because of the workforce development and what can be done there. And lastly, we're going to, we'll have our fourth cohort in the fall. In summary, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and give you an update. I'd be glad to answer any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you, Bob. Questions or comments from the board?
I'm just so proud of all the work that you and the team
Yep.
have done, because it's grown so much since the first cohort, and what a blessing this has been for our town. Thank you.
My pleasure. Our pleasure.
Other comments or questions? I'll have one. If you have nothing better to do on the 17th, our next meeting, please come and you'll hear from two high school young ladies who have put together a very similar program, thanks to some of your information. And they will make a presentation on what they're doing at the high school for, let's call it launch number 2, Holly Springs. All right. Anything else? All good?
Well, I had the opportunity to come and address cohort 3. I was asked for my pearls of wisdom, and I think out of 20 minutes, I might have given 2 or 3 minutes of pearls of wisdom, but I was really impressed by the quality of people that were not only running Launch, but the type of entrepreneurs you attracted, how serious they were about their business and getting it going. My question is, during the interview process, I'm sure you asked them, what is holding you back, right? What are you finding that is holding them back most commonly? What are the issues that the entrepreneurs in our town are most worried about when they're thinking about striking out on their own, taking that big risk?
The most common one, Aaron, is how do I turn my idea into a business? And how do I set it up as a business? And how do I run it as a business? And how do I build this business? And, you know, a lot of people have ideas, but the question is, you know, how do you turn it into business and how do you make money? Because, you know, after all, we do explain to them that you run business, you know, business that loses money is a hobby. Business that makes money does it for profit.
So you said you had 12 potential brick and mortars coming up.
Right. Brick and mortar plus people
Or
who are
rental.
actually using existing, yeah.
Do you see, is there a reason that they have not taken that step into the brick and mortar? Are they just not there yet in their business plan, or is there something the town
They're
is lacking?
building what I call the scope of their business, the revenue of their business that allows them to take that next step. But a lot of them are, you know, in fact, some of them, frankly, we've had to kind of, you know, take it easy, don't go too fast, you know, yeah. Good, 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 thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Let's hear Bob. Agenda item 8A, public hearing, planned unit development 19-PUD-01 Green Oaks West. This would be Melissa Sigmund, Planning and Zoning, Sean Ryan, Planning and Zoning, Rachel Jones, Engineering, and hello.
Oh, thank you, Mayor and Council. So as noted, the item before you this evening is a joint public hearing with the Planning Board for Green Oaks West Planned Unit Development. So the purpose of this evening will be to hold that joint public hearing and then to forward this on to the Planning Board for their review and recommendation. To give you some general context, this project is approximately 120 acres in size, located to the south of Holly Springs New Hill Road and to the east of Green Oaks Parkway. The property is located partially within the town limits and partially in our ETJ. And this request is for the planned unit development master plan, and there is an associated rezoning request as well. So this is the specifics, and that rezoning is just kind of the shell to designate it as a planned unit development. That will be a later portion of the development request. So what is a PUD? PUD is really a type of rezoning that's used to encourage creativity and thinking outside of the box in ways that development can occur that would not normally be possible through our standard Unified Development Ordinance requirements. So this does act as the zoning, establishing the permitted uses and standards for the development, essentially its own customized zoning district. As I mentioned, this tonight is the master plan, so the actual plans and those standards that will be addressed. The next steps after this would be to forward that recommendation to the planning board. It would almost then continue in the typical process of a traditional rezoning project with the planning board recommendation back to town council. So this evening's, the purpose of this evening is to both allow the public comment and to allow both groups to hear all of that comment and any questions and concerns of each other simultaneously, so that it really can front load a lot of that discussion and make sure that everyone has the same information early in the process. So if anything needs to be worked out during the planning board hearing or planning board meeting and then town council decision, you can get all of that information that you need up front and work through any of those issues. So for context, this site is located near several existing developments, including the 12 Oaks, a large residential community, as well as Oakview Elementary School, Hensley Subdivision, and Thales Academy. To the south, we have the business park, as well as Sears, and the Holly Springs Town Center, for those familiar with that large commercial shopping center. So this project, as you know, we recently approved the new land use and character plan back in October. With that, we have brand new land use categories. This property is located within the Innovation Village character area. And really what this is intended to be is a modern mixed-use integrated approach to either a business park or an employment center. So this is looking at both the uses as well as the way that they fit together and making sure that they are integrated and contain the items listed here: the walkability, sidewalks, street trees, bike facilities, greenways, and parks. So it really looks at the way that these uses fit together. The current zoning of the property is split with a variety of uses, including both residential and properties that have already been rezoned to those business park type uses, or zones such as BT conditional use. However, they are looking to unify the zoning of the entire site with that planned unit development. The property is also surrounded by a variety of existing zonings. To the north, it's predominantly residential, and the uses are predominantly residential. To the south, you have, as I mentioned, the business park and those the RT industrial type uses, as well as to the west with the RT and the Holly Springs Business Park zoning. So this is really a transitional property in between that residential, heavily residential area and the more intense industrial areas to the south and west. So as mentioned, the property is about 120 acres. The total gross density, so the density of the entire project, is approximately 5 units per acre, spread out over the entire area, although the residential uses are very condensed, as we'll describe. The maximum is that 600 residential dwelling units, all upper story multifamily, so there are no standalone multifamily buildings proposed or allowed with this development proposal. The PUD has been broken down into 5 districts, so these would equate to essentially zoning districts within the development. They kind of range the gamut from the office mixed use, which really focuses on office or hotel type uses. The West Center, which is the most intense district and really the heart of the development, focusing on commercial with allowing large format commercial as well. The office and institutional, which is a transition zone as you move closer to some of those existing business park uses or kind of going east toward the site. The clean technology, again, moving towards our traditional business park areas. And then open space, which really just identifies those areas designated for either natural areas, greenways, remaining in open space. And this map illustrates the categories that are described, going from the West Center, as I mentioned, kind of that heart and focus. That is then further broken down into 2 sub-districts to ensure that the standards are really customized to meet the adjacent uses. The office mixed use, which is that office and hotel focused designation. The office and institutional, as we move eastward on the site, with those office uses going towards our Duke Health, and then headed south to the southeast of the project, that clean technology, which transitions into our existing business park areas. The developer has provided phasing within both the PUD document itself, and then that will also translate into the developer agreement. Really what this is looking at and kind of comes down to is ensuring that specifically the office and commercial uses occur prior to the development of that mixed use. Specifically what they intend to be likely one mixed use building, which would have residential above. So this is a timing commitment. The full language is listed here, and you can see highlighted some of the key elements in terms of the amount. So having 50,000 square feet of office and flex and 50,000 square feet of commercial prior to that mixed use building, limiting the amount of residential with that first commitment so that any additional residential units would not be occurring until after that initial square footage of office and flexes. And this is really intended to ensure that the project is meeting the intent of this area as an employment center and not focusing simply on retail commercial uses, but maintaining those office components, the flex space, which we understand is very vital in this area and very in demand. So it's really looking to make sure that the timing of everything occurs, while still taking into account that the developer has indicated their interest to move many parts of this project along simultaneously. And with that, so many of the development standards that are described, we have several that are very similar to our zoning ordinance, the UDO development standards, really the parking, very similar. Landscaping generally is accustomed to the UDO requirements with some changes for streetscape. Architecture has many of the same interests as our UDO, with standards on the building materials, the textures, the roof treatments, looking at those features. It does take a different approach to it to really ensure that the high quality development is differentiated between focal buildings and those buildings that kind of go into the background. So they have taken a different approach, but still maintaining the standards for many of the aspects that we would look at in the Unified Development Ordinance. Also looking at some landmark features, creating unique focal points and unique kind of elements of the community, whether through wall art, green planted walls, adding interesting materials to the building, whether through cut metal screens or colored glass inserts. So they are incorporating elements of interest in architecture to make this a unique location. Getting into tree preservation, the development has provided the minimum of at least 12.04 acres. So essentially 10% of the property has tree preservation. Typically in a development that is commercial in the UDO, they'd be required to have 10% preservation. For areas that were industrial, they would have 0% required tree preservation. This development is looking at it holistically and as a whole looking to provide at least 10%. So essentially more than if the property developed independently as commercial areas, as multifamily areas, and as industrial areas. Their priorities are similar to those found in the UDO and are listed here, just looking at several of the feature areas that would be important for their determination later down in the development plans of the specific areas. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but the hashed areas on the plan are those areas intended for preservation, although it may not, the area shown is larger than the 12.04 acres, so it does give some flexibility in that they could provide, the exact locations will be determined at the time of development plan with that minimum meant. So for a plan unit development, there is a requirement for at least 10% of the project area to be provided as usable open space and recreation. This proposal includes more than that, with at least 12.3% of the project for those uses. It includes a wide variety of amenity types that are suited to the type of development proposed, both urban parks, greenways, pocket parks, other types of amenities that are consistent with the layout, as well as both a town-maintained greenway of about 2,500 linear feet, and then internal multi-use paths that are essentially internal greenways. Those would be maintained by the development, but would be publicly accessible, so that Anyone could use those and use those to interconnect through the project and to our larger greenway system. And we'll have Matt discuss a little bit more in detail our greenway plan in later slides. Going into open space, so this is the plan for the open space that illustrates the locations of the general features that would be provided in terms of the amenities, outlines the types of amenities that they're looking to provide, and minimum size for those different amenities. So you can see that they're well dispersed throughout the project so that each area will have its own open space component, as well as, again, amenities that are suited for the development types, whether they be more urban hardscape in nature or more traditional pocket parks. And with that, we have Rachel from engineering to discuss some of the engineering plans related to this project. If you have any questions now, I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, we can have all staff questions after we have Rachel and Matt present some of the other independent parts.
You want to hold the questions until the end? Make sense?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not Rachel.
This is Matt Beard. I'll help you here.
Matt Beard, Parks and Recreation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the greenways that have been proposed on the PUD documents. On this slide, we have figure 4.2b. This is basically the document that we in Parks point to whenever we're meeting with developer or property owner, showing where we would like to see a greenway in general. These are not exact locations of greenways that have been designed and engineered. These are showing kind of regional connections and possible routes based on high-level topography and property lines. So on this, I've kind of superimposed loosely the project boundaries for the Green Oaks West PUD. As well, you will see the location of proposed greenways going east and west and north and south. So keep that in mind as we go on to the next slide, where we have shown the proposed, this is taken directly from the open space slide that we just had up, kind of highlighting where the town of Holly Springs maintained greenways are proposed going east-west, kind of aligning similarly with how it was shown on the comprehensive transportation plan map, but also showing the 10-foot privately maintained greenway connection. In addition to those on-site greenways, I've added the existing 10-foot wide sidewalk that goes almost the entire length of Green Oaks Parkway. There are a few sections where there are stream crossings and it narrows down to, I believe, 6 feet on the sides, as well as the 10-foot sidewalk along the north side of Holly Springs New Hill Road that connects with an existing greenway between Oakview Elementary School and Hensley Subdivision, which goes into 12 Oaks and could ultimately lead to additional connections, kind of shown sort of backing all the way out in scale to the point where we're no longer looking at our own jurisdiction. So here we have in the red star is our project location. Where the cursor is now is the Oakview Elementary School and the greenway that I was just discussing, going through 12 Oaks and then stubbing out over here as a Duke property. Carolina Springs would be located up here, and then all of this is the town of Apex jurisdiction. So while it may be important to look at regional connections and what our neighbors are doing, we have no control over any of this. They could go and change this plan any day. So let's focus on what we have within our jurisdiction. In addition to the greenways and wide sidewalks that are shown on here, you have the typical 5-foot wide sidewalk connection shown as part of the engineering design road cross sections. And Rachel will probably be able to speak more to that if you have questions. And now we'll have Rachel.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry. When you go back, are we double counting the Greenway land and the tree preservation land and the wet, like, it seems like they're overlapping on the same areas. Are we double dipping on some of the areas to call them both greenways and tree preservation? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yes.
So there are certain areas that are allowed to be double counted, such as the tree preservation areas and wetland buffers, stream buffers, etc. So those areas can be duplicated. The greenways are required to be outside. The greenways themselves, the trail itself has to be outside of the tree preservation area because it will not be preserved. So it may be directly adjacent. The location of that trail may run right next to the area for the tree preservation, but the 20-foot wide or however foot wide easement that's required to have a 10-foot wide trail will be outside of the tree preservation area, but they could be right next to each other.
Okay, thank you.
And now Rachel Jones, Engineering.
Good evening. I am Rachel. I'll walk you through the utility components of the project and then move toward the transportation requirements. So on the screen before you is the proposed water distribution plan within the site. There is existing water main along Holly Springs New Hill Road here and also Green Oaks Parkway as well as Thomas Mill Road. The project is also in the reuse service area, so they are required to provide reclaimed water to the project. There's existing reclaimed water main along Holly Springs New Hill Road and Green Oaks Parkway. The project is responsible for extending reclaimed water main along Thomas Mill Road. Got cut off a little bit there, apologize, but across their property frontage on Thomas Mill. And then they'll connect with that main as well as the existing mains to serve the internal site. And with the water requirements and reclaimed water requirements, hydraulic models and hydraulic analyses were submitted and reviewed and approved. Then moving into sanitary sewer, what's on your screen before you in these green highlighted lines is the internal sewer network. So with the project, a sewer analysis was provided and reviewed. And then to the southwest of the property, you'll see this darker or thicker green line. This is the proposed sewer outfall that will ultimately terminate at the Business Park pump station. So on this next slide, get a little closer look at that and the conceptual layout. So this is Green Oaks Parkway. The project site is over in this area. And so what is needed today to serve the site is a new sewer outfall that goes across some adjacent properties in the business park and will ultimately terminate at the existing business park pump station. So through a developer agreement that is being drafted, the applicant is working with staff members to finalize the sewer and pump station evaluation along with that development agreement. Moving into the transportation components, this is an overview of the vehicular circulation plan that the applicant provided in the master plan document as part of the PUD in the packet before you this evening. And so this is highlighting some of the street cross sections that are being proposed with the project. This is Holly Springs New Hill Road, highlighted in red. So across their entire property frontage, there's thoroughfare widening required. And the cross section is a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare, including standard 5-foot sidewalk. The purple highlighted area is the next largest street cross section being proposed. Internal to the site, it is a 2-lane median divided street that will have on-street parking on both sides as well as bike lanes on both sides. The green highlighted street, the east-west connector, is a little narrower. It's a 2-lane street cross section, so there's no median here being proposed. But it will also include on-street parking on both sides of the street as well as bike lanes on both sides of the street. And then the north south connector here highlighted in yellow as a two-lane cross-section as well. No on-street parking being proposed here, but bike lanes will be provided on both sides. So a traffic impact analysis was required with the project. This is an overview of the study, radius of influence, which was well over a mile in distance. They were required to study 10 intersections that are shown here in red, and four of the site access drives located here in blue. So some of the standard requirements identified during the scoping of this document was to apply 5% annual growth rate, and then consider the approved projects in the area and their impact on the transportation network, as well as any projects in the area, including Carolina Springs PUD that wasn't quite approved yet, but was incorporated into this study. And they've identified in the TIA, phase one build out is assumed for 2021, and then the build out of the full planned unit development would be 2024. So then transitioning into the recommendations that came out of this analysis, just to clarify, this is the overall analysis with the planned unit development with some assumptions made with build out timing and whatnot, that with each development plan that is submitted into the process as part of the PUD, the TIA would need reevaluated to determine if the development plan is within the originally approved parameters that would be included in the PUD approval. So there are several items highlighted in yellow on the screen here. These are kind of the bigger magnitude improvements that we found that came out of the TIA that we wanted to highlight this evening. Hitting the fees in lieu that you'll see, the FIL stands for fee in lieu, moving from west to east. This red dot is on the intersection at New Hill Road and Green Oaks Parkway. So the project did trigger a fee in lieu of installation of the proposed signal at this intersection, proportionate to their project impact. And so we have the design for that signal. It's being reviewed by DOT currently. So they anticipate installation of the signal probably the first quarter of 2021. Moving to the next fee in lieu you see here, this is the intersection of Old Holly Springs Apex Road and New Hill Road. The TIA recommended a fee in lieu of the realignment of this intersection proportionate to the project impact. So that will be determined, the amount will be determined as they move through this process and work their way toward planning board and town council. There's also a third right turn lane from New Hill Road onto the bypass going south, identified a fee in lieu, again, proportionate to the project impact. 450 feet is the anticipated length being required for that. Sorry, I keep hitting the mouse. All right, and then moving south on the bypass, there's also a fee in lieu being identified to contribute toward the southbound lane, third lane on the bypass. And we have a project identified on our transportation bond map that's a partner-funded project from Holly Springs New Hill Road to Avent Ferry Road. So that is the project that they would be contributing toward. Just highlighting a couple different areas here. There are two intersections identified as needing monitored for future signal. So this first area that's identified is one of the project site drives being proposed, and it's directly across from the Oakview Elementary School. So a signal warrant analysis would be required with development plan as they start to come through. With the first plan, we would start evaluating that, monitoring where we're at, and if it indeed meets the warrants that the DOT requires. The other location that we'll be monitoring for a signal is the proposed site driveway across from Thaler's Academy and Hensley in this location. And then, as mentioned earlier, the thoroughfare widening along the frontage on Holly Springs New Hill Road will be required as well. And just another item to highlight, should a development plan come in and they've exceeded the proposed build-out dates that we saw on the previous slide of 2021 and 2024. That would be another trigger for a TIA update, new traffic counts, and revisiting those parameters and recommendations. Have any questions for staff? We're happy to answer those.
Yeah, before we go to the applicants, let's do this. Let's have our questions for staff right now. Talk about that. We have some questions right now, and then we'll go to invite the applicants to come up. Do that now? Or do you want to wait? Choice. Don't all talk at once.
Got some questions.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I just don't know. We want to save it. and then
Want to save it?
Dive into it.
I mean, sure.
Or-
That'd be
Probably
fine.
better is to hear the applicant and then
Right.
staff come back
Yeah.
up.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, thank you. We'll get back. Would the applicants like to come forward and say a few words? I think I've seen them before. Again, request, name, address, please. Hmm?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
council members, staff, everyone else. My name is Jim Chandler. My address is 514 Millhopper Lane in Apex. I'm the owner of Chandler Property Group. We're here tonight to present Green Oaks West, 120-acre planned unit development within the land designated for the Holly Springs Business Park. There's an assemblage of 11 parcels along Holly Springs New Hill Road, Green Oaks Parkway, and Thomas Mill. I have with me tonight Tom Spalding and Laura Holloman from the Spalding Group Civil Engineering and Planning, along with Tony Tate, our landscape architect, and Jeff Hawkindale from Timmons Engineering to discuss traffic impact. This whole venture started about 3 years ago when I met Ralph and Brenda Joyner and began representing them as a broker. And then I met Ham and Nancy Womble, and Len Schaefer, and several other folks who own property along Holly Springs New Hill Road. The Wombles and the Joiners and Mr. Schaefer become mentors to me over the last few years as I grew my business, and it really helped out a lot for me personally. So I wanted to say that. So with the land use plan, designated as business park with no current sewer access, and I have these properties listed. I'm trying to figure out what to do to get some value to my clients. We had to come up with a really good way to generate the highest and best use. So at that point, I reached out to Tom Spalding, and I needed to discuss, what could be done to develop this land. At the time you can't build houses over there, so you can't just do a subdivision like everybody else does. You had to come up with something that really, changes the face of the land around there. So, obviously we sat down and figured out a really good plan. And after a few years of relationship building, teamwork, and patience from all the landowners, our development team, as well as tons of feedback from the town planning and engineering staff, economic development, TRC, and council members, we're proud to submit our version of a new modern, inviting, walkable, multifunctional Holly Springs Business Park that truly moves the needle in the town of Holly Springs' quest to improve the ratio of commercial to residential development, and also entice new businesses to come to Holly Springs to bring jobs and tax growth. Anyway, I'll get out of the way now and let Laura Hallman get into the X's and O's of the project, but thank you for hearing us out tonight.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Happy 2020. My name is Laura Halvin with the Spalding Group, as Mr. Chandler mentioned, 1611 Jones Franklin Road, Suite 101 in Raleigh. So, wow, I feel like I'm sending a kid off to college today with Green Oaks West getting to this point. It's been a tremendous labor of love for us to get such a pivotal project before you tonight. As Jim mentioned, Jim doesn't give himself enough credit, but he really was kind of the godfather orchestrating, these parcels together. And we had such a good group of property owners that we've met with along the way, and they've been, wonderful to work with because they've really, bought into the vision of what we're trying to do, and realizing that the sum of the parts is going to be less than the whole, and realize that they need to work together. So here we are, brand spanking new comprehensive plan. Melissa talked about it in her presentation. Innovation Village. Wow, that's a new term. This is a completely new concept for the town, one that the new comprehensive plan introduced. If you look at the term innovation, one of the definitions is a new idea or a new product, which I love. When I read that, said that's exactly what Green Oaks West is going to be to Holly Springs. There's no development in town like it. Melissa described the foundation of the Innovation Village concept, that it abandons the idea of a business park that goes dark after 5 p.m. Instead, a mixed-use village takes shape, one that is surrounded by one or more neighborhoods, like 12 Oaks, like Hensley, as well as existing businesses within Holly Springs Business Park, and creates a synergy by creating an energized and thoughtful transition. The design, scale, and character and intensity of development is centered on creativity, technology, which could in turn support a corporate headquarters, research and development, and provide nearby retail and housing options for its employees. Look, there are options in Wake County for employment to go, but not quite like this one. Not every company wants to locate in downtown Raleigh or downtown Durham where they don't get an identity. They don't want to locate in RTP where the young folks that they're trying to attract view it as an office park designed for their grandfather in the 1960s. They want an opportunity to be a part of something unique and something that is a part of something greater than themselves. An employee center that is energized by nearby amenities like greenways, developed open spaces such as plazas, and opportunities for amphitheaters and other social gathering places that create a sense of place for their employees. They want nearby amenities so they can get a quick bite to eat, take care of their to-do list on their lunch break, or grab a bite or beverage after work. And to have critical residential opportunities that supplement this work-live-play lifestyle rather than overwhelm it. And as Melissa mentioned, we've taken great pains to really put ourselves to the forefront that the main identity for this is employment, not residential. This planned unit development, as Jim mentioned, represents years of careful planning to give the community something all their own. This is the innovation. And as you go through here, it's like checking the boxes. We've street and block patterns. We talked about, Rachel just did a great job of talking about how those are walkable and how they've been designed and engineered to create a connection, viable connections through the development where folks can get off of Holly Springs Neal Hill Road and they can have that east to west connection without getting on the existing perimeter roads. It also talks about keeping buildings up close to the road and lessening the setbacks, and that's something that the PUD does. Although we did keep the existing setbacks along Holly Springs Neal Hill Road to 50 feet, which is what the UDO currently requires, being cognizant and keeping that uniform streetscape for the adjacent residences, as well as keeping that uniform look along Holly Springs Neal Hill Road, as well as keeping that 30 feet along Green Oaks Parkway for the same reason. So I'll stop talking now and let Tony Tate the floor to share the vision that is Green Oaks West.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Council, planning board, staff.
like to thank Melissa. She did a great job describing basically what we've done. We've obviously worked with staff for several months. Staff, through scoping meetings, we've had neighborhood meetings, we've had TRC meetings, all in an effort to create a framework of regulations that ensures the town and the neighborhood and the community that the concepts and the directives of the Innovation Village concept within the comprehensive plan is something that will come to fruition, and that one that the town can count on in the future, that as we set these things up, we'll get something in the end that's what we're all looking to build. As Laura said, it's an emphasis on clean technology, employment, research, office development, small scale retail, in a village scenario where the streets are energized, streets are activated with on-street parking, and street trees, and wide sidewalks, and that the public realm that you get in a mixed-use development, all wrapped into a not a business park, but an innovative place where people can get out and enjoy those types of development within an employment-centered development. So it all has to start with some kind of vision. And so we were obviously blessed to be able to work on such a great project, a great location. And so, we took the site and looking at exterior developments around the site and how those play into what we're trying to create here. Transportation patterns that are there, environmental issues with the long fingers of wetlands and buffers that we have extending through the site, and trying to piece all those things together into a comprehensive type plan. And so in doing that, we've excluded uses from the existing. We've limited single-use sites. We have density maximums that play into traffic and the overall development. We have development hub locations for prominent buildings, terminating vistas, and energy activated centers within the site that are some are more important than others. Again, we're trying to create that pedestrian human scale on the street and not have buildings that are back off of the road. We're really trying to energize the streets. Off-street parking is located behind the buildings or to the side of buildings, like we're looking for. On-street parking, street trees, open space opportunities that Matt talked about earlier are scattered all throughout the site. And then landscape requirements that are based on the site-specific type of uses that we have, and where buildings are up close to the street and we have a retail use, and just formulating and dictating how those landscapes can be built there. The architecture of the site, we've got 20 pages of architectural standards within the document, and so we're trying to push the limits of exceptional design and innovative solutions that will really set this park apart from everything else around. And so again, we're looking to employ icon buildings, the key locations. Through architecture, we're trying to eliminate substandard building materials and make sure we get good quality structures and innovative structures, sustainable construction materials. And so we want those to dominate the landscape. Building placement up on the street, and massive buildings create the human scale of the street system, where there's a formula of having the right height to the width of the streets. And so looking at all those things to help really solidify that pedestrian streetscape that we're looking for. Again, open space, we've got all different kinds of open space amenities scattered throughout the site. We've got a gateway park, we've got urban parks, we've got urban plazas, greenways, pocket parks, all scattered throughout, and they're all dictated in the document so that there's assurances that as the sites develop in the future that we'll have those things where they need to be. To the question that was asked earlier, greenways are not counted in the tree preservation areas, and the buffers were not counted in open space. So to have all those things calculated out, so when employers come and they're looking for a site, employers want their employees to have places to go sit outside or to go walk on the greenway, just a healthier environment that I think employers are looking for these days. And so this time I'd like to do just a quick fly through the site based on kind of the concept that we're thinking about that helps kind of see the mass and scale of what we're doing. So we can take a couple minutes and just look through this, and hopefully this will help a little bit. Oh, I didn't know.
We have some technical.
I've got IT coming. Everybody needs a great IT guy.
We have 7.
Well, I don't have a good joke, but
There he is.
They're hyperlinked. There's no hyperlink. Linda, we're passing a cough drop down to you. From Sean.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Figured it'd be Dan with the Boy Scout motto, you know. Wrong page today. Wrong page.
There we go. It's moving.
There's
Just a
sound.
quick fly through. This is going up Holly Springs Road, and then we'll turn and go down into the sort of the main entrance to the site, which is a median divided tree line kind of avenue that leads in. And we're heading down towards the roundabout, which is kind of the hub of activity, the main hub. And so across the street, we can visit, multi-story office buildings. Panning back out now over the West Center track, heading back out Green Oaks Parkway, and now we're traveling the main spine road that heads through the site, and this is headed back towards the east. You can see we're coming up on the roundabout. But it really gives you a sense of how the streetscape is framed and how you're going to get that human, walkable streetscape there is framed by the buildings where it's that enclosed space. Now we're moving towards what would be the extension of Premier, which will be coming up to this intersection. Again, we've got all the buildings pulled up close to the street, and so now we're moving kind of into the clean technology and back towards the existing business partners. The road in the background is Thomas Mill Road, so now we're going to just kind of pan up and look over the whole site and give you a little bit of a vision of what, in the end, we hope this will turn into.
Okay.
So now Jeff's gonna come up and talk to you about, traffic.
Thanks, Matt.
New traffic on their own. My name is Jeff Hokenall. I work with Timmons Group in 5410 Trinity Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27607. We did the traffic impact analysis for the project. You're going to have to forgive me. I've got a cold, so if I start coughing, I want you to pass the doctor back. At least grab a water. As Rachel mentioned earlier, we looked at 10 intersections off-site. We also looked at, we've got 4 site driveways actually shown on here. Kind of give you a little bit of what we analyzed. We looked at the development in basically 2 phases. We looked at a phase 1 build out, which will occur in 2021, and we looked at a full build out of the proposed site that will occur in 2024. Phase 1 kind of focuses on the area south of Oakview, kind of bounded by the what I'm calling site access 1, and the full access south of Oakview, and then the road that kind of cuts the property from east to west. So it's kind of in that quadrant, focused on that for phase 1. Looked at a mixture of uses, shopping center, restaurant, hotel, and supermarket. And then for the full build out, we also included, again, additional shopping center, office, multifamily, as they were talking about the residential above, commercial, et cetera, medical office, additional restaurant, supermarket in the flex space down in the bottom corner. Excuse me. I'm going to start working my way around, I guess, kind of more or less clockwise, starting at Holly Springs, New Hill Road, and Green Oaks Parkway, and talk about the improvement recommendations. Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, so starting at again the intersection that I just referred to, we recommended a fee in lieu for traffic signalization at this intersection. Just to kind of give everybody a little bit of an overview, federal guidelines state and NCDOT guidelines state that in order to install the signal, you must meet traffic signal warrants. They're volume-based, safety-based. There's 9 different warrants, basically. NCDOT requires typically that you meet 2, at least of the 3 traffic volume warrants, unless there's a history of severe accidents. We looked at the peak hour warrant. NCDOT has been famous for saying that, at least the district office, that all intersections in North Carolina meet the peak hour warrant. But we're barely meeting the peak hour warrant there. 4 and 8 hour warrants are unlikely to be met at this location. The problem really is, and much to probably everybody's surprise, is Holly Springs New Hill Road just doesn't have the through volume necessary to trigger to meet the federal guidelines minimum thresholds. So we recommend fee in lieu for signalization at that intersection. So when it does finally meet warrants based on the new development coming in, that we'll add that. Let me step back one time. Rachel's already mentioned it, but I wanted to reiterate. We looked at for both growth years, we made sure we included the all area development that's going on as background. We included 7 background developments. We included a 5% ambient growth on top of the 7 background developments. And per DOT and town requirements, we did not look at this as a. We looked at the traffic volumes coming into and out of the exterior nodes of the network. And we did not use really an internal capture percentage, which probably will more than likely happen where you've got the folks in say 12 Oaks that right now have to go to a grocery store that's outside of this network or whatever. If there's a grocery store in Green Oaks West, they could travel to and from and never get on 55 bypass. We did not look at that. We looked at it as if they left the network and came into the network. So basically offering a more conservative look at the overall traffic network. So kind of moving around, sorry about that. Moving around, site access 1. Again, along with the widening, these are, and the recommendations that we're mentioning are for full build out. But along with widening the 1/2 ultimate cross section along Holly Springs New Hill Road, addition of a left turn lane, coming off Holly Springs New Hill Road, and a right turn lane coming off Holly Springs New Hill Road, as well as northbound coming from the site driveway. We recommended a left turn lane there. That's similar for all three full access driveways along Holly Springs New Hill Road, lefts, rights, and then separation of left and right turn lanes. Moving around to Old Holly Springs Apex, New Hill, Holly Springs New Hill Road, recommended a fee in lieu for the widening / realignment of Old Holly Springs New Hill Road. Kind of going north to Bennett Mill Parkway, recommended if Carolina Springs PUD had not already installed or has not already installed a construction of an eastbound right turn lane off Bennett Mill Parkway, or I don't think it's called Bennett Mill there, but the western side of the intersection going eastbound. And then looking down to 55 bypass, we recommended the fee in lieu for the construction of a third westbound right turn lane off New Hill Road, and then the fee in lieu for our proportionate share of the widening of NC 55 bypass starting from New Hill Road to south of the U-turn point south of Green Oaks Parkway, approximately I think it's 450 feet south. Moving down Green Oaks Parkway, we recommended the construction of a southbound right turn lane off Premier Drive onto Green Oaks Parkway. There were no recommendations at the Thomas Mill Premier Drive. For site driveway 5, which is the driveway off Green Oaks Parkway, recommended full access at that location to be aligned with the proposed development that's I think they're currently in the planning processes for that parcel of land, or potentially recommended the southbound left to be aligned with that driveway whenever the time comes. Those are the recommendations for the traffic impact analysis.
So there you have it, the X's and O's of the project. This thing is, it's really cool. I think, Holly Springs can really benefit from having something like this to really help build to the future. And, I love this town, and it deserves to be not just a bedroom community. Like the mayor said earlier, you want people to not have to leave here if they don't want to. Well, I think this creates a lot of that for us, and it does, it really starts something in this part of town that I think would really help out the Clovis residents and a lot of other folks, a lot of the other subdivisions that are being built in the area, as well as begin that process of transforming that business park from something that was really industrial before to now having some better tech jobs, and, some Class A office. And I know we need some more medical office buildings for that new hospital building. So anyway, I'd like to have your support, and thank you for hearing us out tonight.
Thank you.
Just like to say a few things. The reason why we're able to show you the fly-throughs and, a speculative concept plan is because of the concrete standards that are in the PUD narrative itself. The first thing we did when we sat down is we took the permitted uses listed in every commercial district and every industrial district, and we said, what do we want here? What do we not want here? The first thing we struck was drive-through restaurants, automotive services. Now, granted, gas stations, quick lubes, they're needed, and that's a needed service, but not something that we wanted here. So that was the first two things. Then we looked at scale, and we said, how do we prevent something that's this big from being too overbearing with these different districts? Then we said, okay, let's look at the corner where there could be an opportunity for someone just to go there and do an overwhelmingly big box use, and let's limit the square footage, and that's what we did. So aside from, we know, let's see, Wegmans, I believe, is 120,000 square feet. Am I saying that? Close. there's not going to be a Wegmans or a Publix on this. It's not going to fit. In fact, we've limited the size of this to saying that gross, so this whole area, gross, can only be 100,000 square feet, and of that, excluding, a specialty grocery, which is really the only thing that we see going here just because of what can fit physically. And we've set aside from that, we can't have a single use greater than 60,000 square feet. So that right there limits your targets, your Lowe's, of course, whatever other Lowe's empty. But so we're trying to paint a picture of a smaller scale neighborhood center service. You've got all that on 55, and that's great, and that was needed. But this is not meant to trickle down here. This is meant to be an amenity for the surrounding residential and the amenity for the surrounding businesses, but not to control it and dictate its identity. That's why the only residential that's going to be allowed, you couldn't have any residential here. Here, this is your multi-story office buildings, which are a minimum 3 stories, can go all the way up to 7 stories or up to 10 if they really had a nice user there that wanted to have a corporate headquarter identity. These pink buildings would be your only opportunity that we see is really having a true mixed use type feel, where you would have your commercial on the bottom and residential above, because again, we can't have a standalone residential. We're only allowing it in the upper story. So really, we did allow for the possibility. Sure. In this area along Holly Springs New Hill Road, that was some of the feedback that we received from TRC. I know it was a long time ago, but the feedback was that they wanted to not go higher than 3 stories along Holly Springs New Hill Road. So that's what these buildings within 100 feet of Holly Springs New Hill Road will be limited to 3 stories. And these other areas, they can go up to 5 stories if they so choose. And that's really the cap for the rest of these professional office buildings. These professional office buildings that front what we call the main spine road, or Street B as it's referred to in the PUD document, that is the only other area where you could have upper story residential. And we see that as a pie in the sky dream, that if a developer wanted to do that, they could. But really, we see residential being located here in close proximity to nearby businesses as well as retail. This is the hotel site that we've talked with in great length with both the Economic Development Department as well as some of the business park users. We met with Sears, and they mentioned that all the folks that come in, they now stay in Cary because there's just nothing for those folks to do when they stay in the hotel. So they take them to Cary to stay. So they said that they would love to be able to put them right across the street where you have a hotel and all these amenities. The idea is to have a hotel that would have, as I think we've mentioned, conference room space that in a large enough facility to be able to house some business events for area businesses as well as these future businesses as well. So that's really the gist of what we're trying to create. We've really tried to be conscious of what is around us, but at the same time knowing and acknowledging that this is something new and exciting, Innovation Village that's never been assigned to any parcel in Holly Springs, and by my quick research today around Lake County either. So this is something that is commended by staff and the consultant who worked together on the comprehensive plan to create something so unique. And we worked really hard in our PUD narrative document so you would have concrete objectives that talks to parking location, uses, building placement that really spoke to, as well as amenities, that really spoke to painting that framework and assuring that no matter who came in at what time, they would be tied to that standard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Let's do, and then we'll go to questions and answers of the staff, and then we'll go through the public hearing. Does that make sense? Apparently? Okay. Questions to the applicants, please, or comments, if there are any.
I'll start. So I agree with you guys that this is, I think, new for everybody. I had a hard time when I met with Jim envisioning what an innovation village would look like. So basically, going off of the land use plan draft documents that our consultant gave us, I think you guys have done a really good job of taking that document and trying to put it on paper without really anything to compare it to. One of the things that caught my eye in the draft document and with your guys' proposal was that this is obviously primarily an employment center. Right? We're looking at a maximum of 600 units, right, and a maximum of up to 1 million+ square foot of commercial and office space, but also a minimum of a little over 300,000. So, how much total residential space are we looking at potentially with 600 apartment units compared to the square footage of our commercial stuff? I mean, if we think a modest apartment, a multi-dwelling unit is in 900 to 1,000 square feet, we're looking at over 500,000 square feet of residential space maximum potentially.
We typically just allow for 900 square feet, and it kind of goes across the board from 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. It's kind of a middle ground for a base number. Obviously, none of the units have been designed yet, but that's kind of a base number.
So that's one concern that I have, is that we're looking at the potential, and Jim and I talked about, I have no problem, especially in this purpose, what we're trying to design here in a village. Obviously, a village needs residential. Residential is necessary to having a 24/7 economic hub, right? Something that does not shut down at the end of the day, but the potential to have an equal number of residential square footage to office or retail commercial, when this is primarily an employment center, that's something that I just want to make sure we have a good ratio here and that it is kept as primarily an employment center moving forward. And the other thing, on the first page, it talks about having a variety of home densities and choices. Obviously, we've limited it in this PUD to just simply multi-family dwellings above the commercial, correct? So what steps can we take to make sure that there is a variety? Because some of the people working here might like that, a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. But there also might be some families who are looking for that more suburban urban lifestyle, or as is also just mentioned in the character analysis, the creative spaces, loft apartments. How can we ensure that there is that mixture so that there's a variety of opportunities for different people looking for different living situations?
So, I think we all arrived at residential being only an upper story because that was the feedback we were given from both council, PRC, staff, over 2 years. We came and we had, originally we had, quite honestly, we had this whole area right here as residential when we started, because we saw the opportunity with, you had all these unique fingers, and we said, well, how do we create something there that's a main office campus? And that's really when we kind of had the paradigm shift of, well, it's not just headquarters, it's, we heard tonight how there's a growing, entrepreneurial community. We can start to have other multi-sizes of buildings and not just have a large, expansive business, which I think was initially the get here, was just to have purely campus. So we've done away from that. But to answer your question So I say all that to say that after a lot of really informative and productive meetings of staff, really felt like limiting it to upper story, as well as, we also have the opportunities for live work units. Those are also allowed, which you said, which would allow folks to do something different. The only thing that we're not allowing is single-family townhomes and a pure garden-style apartment building. But all those things that you described, your loft, your live work, your different types of upper story uses, those all will be able to be in the development. And maybe it's having an additional sentence there that paints a picture of that and saying that that's encouraged.
And I think so, because, I know that some other members of the council have talked about developers who have brought workforce units, and that's not something that fits into this development, which is fine. But in lieu of that, having a variety, so we're not having just premier apartments, because there are some employees I know who work in the business park, but to this day can't afford to live in Holly Springs, and if we're building the same premier apartments here, right down the street from them, and they still can't work there, then it defeats some of the purpose of the Innovation Village, of being a place where you can live and work. What was the feedback from the community meeting from the folks in Hensley and 12 Oaks, and how did that go?
Sure. Well, a lot of them are in the audience tonight, so I'll thank them for coming out. We had an initial meeting, and with the prescribed 200 feet radius, and we just felt like it didn't hit enough people. So what we did was we emailed and called the HOA management companies for both Hensley and 12 Oaks and said, we want you to send out an email blast to every single resident telling them that we're having a neighborhood meeting so we can get their feedback. So we did. We had it. We had a very good meeting in December, so December 12th, actually. So we wanted to make sure we had it before Christmas and before the holidays to give that opportunity for everyone to come who wanted to. And we had a very good meeting at Hope Community Church, where they have a wonderful meeting facilities, by the way. But and we're able to share our vision and kind of get their feedback. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I will say that overall, obviously their main concern, they talked about traffic. They're very concerned about wanting a signal there. We want the signal there too. We absolutely want the signal there, but understand that it's as our traffic engineer mentioned, it's a DOT issue, but we will push for the signal. I know the town is pushing as well for that and had no problem paying a $50,000 fee in lieu for that. The other thing that they came up, they liked that we were eliminating the drive-through facilities, the gas stations, the automotive, the big box stuff. They hoped that would in turn create small, unique businesses, kind of similar to what has happened at Town Hall Commons, and they liked the idea that could happen. And then they also, I think, understood the concept of wanting to do something unique that would attract, the up-and-coming businesses to Holly Springs that may not be attracted to, a single-use kind of RTP campus, but something that was more energized. But I'll let you hear from them later as well, because they did have concerns about traffic and phasing and timing, so we talked about things like that.
Speaking of which, can you go over again the phasing of this with regards to commercial, residential, maybe provide some concrete examples of how that would actually play out?
Mm-hmm.
Go back to that slide. So obviously sewer is coming in from down in this zone, and the first logical place for development is this area here. And so phase one is going to end up kind of being in this zone, but with the restrictions on providing the non-residential uses prior to obtaining the permits for the residential here is going to kind of ensure that this development starts out as a business, not a business park, but an innovation village. No, I think part of it's me, but I'll speak into this. Again, you know, phase one is in this zone because that's kind of where the sewer's coming from. It's the most logical place, and you would start where, and we would extend sewer up from there. But the businesses and things, the hotel, the office, all these things located in here, those would be the first ones to develop. And so we're trying again, and staff is dictating that a certain amount of the office and research and those types of uses that are built prior to building any of the upper floor residential, just to ensure that we're heading off in the right direction, and this is truly an employment center, not a residential mixed use, typical kind of thing. We mixed that in, but the square footage is required before we can do this kind of in this zone. So, and then from there, you know, obviously sewer will move up the bottom and we'll start to pick up these other areas of the site. So phase one would happen here just because of the nature of where the sewer is coming from. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Did I look at that correctly though? We're talking at 50,000 feet, 50,000 square feet, is that what I saw? For commercial prior to residential?
It's 100,000.
So
Plus
the,
50 of,
right. The phasing would require a minimum of 50,000 of office and flex, plus 50,000 of the standalone commercial, and have those building permits pulled prior to the mixed use. So it is 100,000 total, minimum 50 coming from office or flex. And
okay. Other questions or comments?
Are we going down the line there?
Sure. A couple things I wanted to clarify. I think the first one was on, start with building heights. I think, Laura, you mentioned that the ones along Holly Springs New Hill Road would be limited to 3 stories. I don't see that reflected in the PUD document. I see a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5. Right. So I would reiterate your statement that height of those along the road should probably be contained at 3 stories as a maximum. And if you're going to have 5-story buildings, they should be focused in the center of the project for a business intense sort of atmosphere. So I just wanted to make sure the document reflects what you had stated, because I didn't catch that.
If you look on 3-4 on table 3-C building height criteria, you can see the first column, maximum stories within 100 feet of Holly Springs New Hill Road, and all those across the board say 3 stories.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you. I apologize if that wasn't.
Yeah, no, okay. I was at the other building height table, so that's probably why I didn't see it. I just got to find that sentence on there. The second question I had on the permitted uses, I went through those as well. I did not see self-storage facilities as a permitted use. Could you clarify that that's correct?
Correct. That will not be a
not being
permitted use.
Okay. My questions. From my conversations with Mr. Chandler, I thought most of the residential was going to be contained in the West Center, and based on the breakdown in the packet, it looks like you have a maximum of 500 units in the West Center and then a potential another 100 units in the office institutional edge. Is there a reason why those other 100 units would be outside sort of that residential center, or why we looked at splitting that out from, you know, where we had focused the residential prior?
Yeah, that's something that, Tony, if you want to speak to the vision, that's really something that we thought, you know, this is something that, you know, we envision this entire street being a walkable urban streetscape. So our thought was, if someone wanted to come in on a smaller scale and do a mixed-use building individually and maybe offer something different as Councilman Wolf mentioned, to do, you know, a smaller scale of different type of residential. We wanted them to have the opportunity to do that and not be limited to this area, but certainly I understand your comment.
Yeah. Okay. On, I guess that's staff actually. That's, yeah, I think that's all I got for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else for the applicant?
I had some questions, and thank you guys for bringing up those things. In terms of when you talk about the vision of this area, and you said things like people could work here and live nearby, and the walkability inside, I was trying to understand the type of buildings you have. There's 28 buildings in here. There's medical. There's restaurants. What type of employment that is? How many jobs? And then you talk about people living there. Would they? I mean, I think that there'll be, it feels to me that the Innovation Center concept was you work and live nearby. This one here, I'm thinking, we've got 600 units of apartments that are above the story. Who are the folks living in there? Are the folks that are working at the restaurants being able to afford to live there? Are the folks that are in the medical buildings, they really want a single detached home? So I'm having a hard time figuring how that story that they will work and live nearby matches up with what is being delivered. And there's lots of great things about this project. I'm just trying to figure out the dialogue of the story, and that one I'm having a hard time seeing that that's working. The other thing I wanted to comment is the walkability. So because of that, I think the walkability is not just within the area, but from this area to the mall across, or, you know, so how well is the walkability for the folks in here to, if they're living in 12 Oaks and walking over here to work? And I don't know if that is talked enough about to see, are we doing a really good job with the crosswalks for things that could happen with that sort of traffic, the reality of it. I work in a campus in Cary where, you know, there's 10,000 of us that come in every day around the same time, coming in and out. So I am concerned about the timing of the traffic. If this is primarily in an employment area, the reality of, oh, where all these folks are. It's not, it sounds more office building. So, you know, from 8 to 9 o'clock, it'll be really, really packed. And then there's people who are living there, they're trying to go out. People are, you know, so I'm still struggling, feeling like the traffic is going to be all right in an already busy area. So traffic definitely is a concern. The tree preservation concept was about to feel like things aren't clear-cutted and that it actually you're preserving some of the space. Looking at that, you're preserving the areas where you have to around the wetlands, but it feels like the rest would feel very played out and planted and not really the tree preservation part. So I'm concerned about feeling like that has the essence of what folks are expecting from those kind of areas. And then, but I'm excited for, I mean, there's some great things about this project. So I'm just giving you the things that I'm thinking of. I think there is a need for more stores in the area, for restaurants, and so those are some of the good things I like. The last comment I have, and it's only because I've heard a lot of folks contact me this week. I do have a concern of cutting down the trees and the impact this might have. The landfill impact is we've heard a lot around how this impacts Target. This is not that far away. So the reality that we do have to figure out what is the impact of the landfill until we can address the issues there. This area might have it too. So let's just call a spade and know that that's something we have to either figure out how we're going to solve it, but it will impact this area.
Okay.
Can I have one more thing? You mentioned innovation. I would love to hear, and I know this is early, but in the concept down the road, talk about LEEDs buildings, or talk about this is all high-tech and Wi-Fi ready, and there are electronic parking stations. So if we're going to talk about innovation, like what are the things that make it that we would say for economic development? Look at this area because it goes above and beyond what is 28 buildings that have. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
I had a question about traffic real quick. Before the last planning board meeting, we had a there was a presentation from a age-restricted 55-plus community, and the traffic analyst at that time said that they could expect 40% less traffic than a typical subdivision because of the type of community that was being built. Is there any consideration given to that when we have assumed at least there will be some people who live and work here and the type of people who will be moving into the community?
DOT limits us to follow the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers formula for internal captures, which you're kind of referring to as far as if I live in this building, I walk to this building, and so I'm not actually entering or exiting onto the network. So yes, that was taken into account. That we do have internal capture percentage. It was hovers around 10%, so it's not a significant, it's not a huge number. Like I said, the way we're required to do the traffic study, I would have expected, I would like to do a lot more anticipate a lot more from folks coming from 12 Oaks and neighboring developments that would go to and from, but that's not the way we can do the traffic. So so we have to look at it, per the DOT and the town's methodology. So we looked at it a little bit more global. So we've got more folks coming into and out of. So when you do look at the impacts, we are showing a more conservative effect on the intersection. I think it'll be a little bit less, but
I appreciate you being conservative.
Yeah, it's said we
12 Oaks appreciate that.
Again, with the 5% growth and all 7 backgrounds and developments and things like that, and the minimal internal capture percentage, and the fact that we're looking at folks coming from somewhere to this and leaving, there's a lot of I think we're adding on and adding on, but that's the requirement. That's how we have to look at it. So.
The other part of the traffic is parking, which we haven't touched on, and I didn't see in the presentation, except there's a potential 25% reduction. But then I think I saw in the PUD that it was up to 50% with certain spaces, like credits for an electric vehicle station, that sort of thing, up to 50%. Can you go into that a little bit?
First.
Laura, while you're looking that up, I'll
Yes.
follow up with a TIA question anyway.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, can you just describe a little bit of your methodology of what you push the traffic as far as Holly Springs New Hill Road versus Green Oaks Parkway as far as traffic coming to and from NC 55?
Sure.
Did you even flow that, or did you put a predominance on one side or the other?
We actually, the way I do trip generation distribution is I look at the external nodes that we've got, folks coming down 55 at Holly Springs, New Hill, and Green Oaks Parkway coming north and south, and use that same distribution percentages for folks going to and from the site. You've got roughly similar land uses with the residential and some commercial, so it's the easiest way to kind of figure that in. I did not do a straight 40% this way, 10% that way. I don't believe that actually occurs. I mean, so I'm looking at the existing travel patterns and kind of mimicking that for this development.
Yeah, I think as this continues to get built out, I don't know that existing traffic pattern on Holly Springs New Hill Road as the predominance is going to be the predominant road of travel. I think Green Oaks Parkway will get much more heavily traveled as it goes down because people are trying to avoid, obviously, New Hill Road and NC 55. It's a nightmare intersection, as we all know. So.
I can see that. Green Oaks Parkway has a little more additional capacity right now than Holly Springs New Hill does. So it's a little bit less traveled than Holly Springs New Hill. So yeah, it'll come to a natural equilibrium, I believe.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is obviously I think that puts a little more emphasis on that signalization there at Green Oaks Parkway. As more of that traffic flows that way, that will start to hit that warrant a lot quicker as we go that direction. And more from a macro perspective, I know where you've got your thing looked up here, but let me ask a couple questions because I think these are germane to all of you right now. As we look at this overall development, and I like the development in general, certainly we need to continue to, as you talked about, move the needle towards the commercial side. And the residential side, there's plenty of residential options in the surrounding areas right here to this commercial. So I'm less concerned about the options for residential in this development as I'm the commercial. This is historically been the business park, and yes, it's the Innovation Village, but much like Carolina Springs, and our emphasis there for the Innovation Village was on the commercial and the surrounding residential outside of that, which we have across the street, whether it's Hensley or Green Oaks, 12 Oaks, sorry. and some of the other apartment complexes that are not very far away. My bigger concern, quite honestly, is the timing of this and what we're looking at. And you're talking about 2021 and then 2024. And my concern for our business park overall and the commercial development is the lack of access. And what I mean by that is NC 55 is onerous to get down. And until we have another venue to get people to the business park, that access to this area for commercial development is going to continue to stymie, I think, growth in this area. So until we get the road widening done on Holly Springs Road and NC 540 gets the major interchange at Holly Springs Road and Sunset Lake with that traffic outlet with another venue for people to get to the business park in this area, there are other roads that I'm concerned about. And I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion about Old Holly Springs Apex Road in that direction going up there and improvements made to that road either from this development or others as we move up towards Meridia, which is another outlet that we're going to have to explore. People are going to have to explore other than NC 55 if we want to make this area viable for commercial development and otherwise. So your thoughts on that?
Okay. Before we let you off the hook, planning board's here, and I guess the question is, does the planning board have any specific questions to the applicants before we ask them to retreat? Yes, you do. You may have to come forward to the mic, if you don't mind, Dan. Then after that, we'll ask for questions from the planning board for the staff.
Thank you. Van Crandall, member of the planning board. I noticed, just a side comment, I noticed in this packet that the completed applicant and petitioner forms were not part of the packet, and I usually enjoy reading those, and especially when they have some feedback from the meetings that you had with outside of the within the area with other neighborhoods, and getting feedback and seeing some of the questions and the answers and the statistics. And the other thing that I like seeing, and I believe that you all have put it in your previous applications, and that was some information about schools. And I didn't see any of that in the packet. So having said that, so this is going to be built out in some phases, and the first implementation is going to be closest to where sewer is coming onto the property. So considering it's being built in phases, I'm just curious why a PUD rezoning is necessary. And could the town's UDO potentially be utilized instead? Why or why not? And so I believe the developer that was named on the packet that we received is Mr. James Adcock. And so I'm wondering, what is the experience of the developer? And is it the developer's intent to actually develop the project or sell it following potential town approval? There was another question, I think, that one of the other planning board members had with regards to the schools. And so I just want to reiterate that again, what the impact on the schools will be as you see it pertaining to this project.
First of all, my name's James Chandler. That's a typo in there. And as far as the schools go,
What's the typo?
the name of the developer.
Oh, the name of the developer is
Chandler.
not James Adcock?
No, it's James Chandler.
Oh, okay.
So
The information we have on some preliminary, and there was an awful lot of preliminary stuff before this, as you well know, was 118 school-aged children. Is that still within the ballgame?
I guess that would average out to whoever lives
Yeah.
in the apartment.
That was a projection.
Town council members of the planning board, the information that's being referred to was provided based on council member questions. In that response, we indicated that the school district is responsible for providing they do the data analysis in terms of what their school needs are and in terms of the number of students that they believe will result from a new development. And so while we don't have the the analytics in terms of what they use to calculate that information, the best available information we had was based on a 2013 data in terms of rates of student generation from different development types, and it is significantly lower in their estimation. In 2013, the number of students generated from a multifamily apartment building versus townhomes or single-family homes. And so those are the rates that were provided for the estimate of the 118 students. So it is very much considerably lower, again, based on that 2013 calculator, if you will, than a single-family neighborhood would. So that is where those numbers were ballparked from. Again, final information, all of this data from the application is provided to Wake County for their analysis in determining their school needs in the future.
Okay. Time being.
Okay, good. To answer other questions about if we plan to build it out, no, we do not. We're going to hopefully get this approved, and we're going to bring in some larger scale developer to come in and take it over and get it moving. Somebody with much more experience.
Okay. So that pertains to my question of PUD rezoning versus not PUD rezoning. So,
Probably talk about that. So there's and Steph, Melissa, feel free to jump in, and Sean. There are several things that we could not do. There is no mixed-use development option in a resource technology or a major employment center that allows us, quite frankly, if we did a mixed-use development option, we would be, as we all know recently, 20% residential. This is not 20% residential. We're well below that. So we would actually have to bump up the residential if we wanted to do a conventional subdivision a conventional development that was a mix of uses, which we know then were thrown in to a mixed-use development option. But mixed-use development option we could only do would be community business. Community business would open up the issues with that allows for big box, which we don't want to do. It doesn't allow for flex space and things like that, which really, the problem that we have is we need all these parcels to work together, to be together. A lot of these parcels along Holly Springs New Hill Road, they're small parcels that cannot withstand if they were developed individually and came in as separate zonings, then the frontage improvements on Holly Springs New Hill Road would kill them, in addition to the additional 50-foot buffer. There would be virtually no development left. And that's why we started to do this. There's a large parcel down here, the Ward parcel, that's virtually eaten up by stream buffer. Literally all they have is this tiny developable area here in purple, which is sounds like a lot, but that they can't afford to get sewer and bring that down for that amount of industrial development. So that's what led us down, and hearing these stories and getting these folks an opportunity, as Jim said, he's represented them for a number of years, and listening to their concerns of, we can't do this alone. We don't have the resources. A developer isn't going to come here and buy, a parcel that's 2 acres, 2.5 acres, piecemeal, knowing that they have, and we did the numbers, off-site sewer cost $950,000, and on-site water, that's $400,000. So that's over $1 million of improvements, which would render a lot of these parcels out of the running to do something standalone that would work. So it just became such a strength to do a plan unit development, heighten the standards, get rid of the permitted uses. For once, let's get a PUD in here that actually says specific architectural standards instead of just saying we'll do whatever the commercial UDO standards are at the time. So that led us into, we visited MetLife campus, Weston Parkway. I would visit SAS if they allowed me past their
I'll
gate.
take you.
Okay, great. Charlotte, all these areas that had wonderful things, and that started to paint a picture of amenities. All these folks, they have wonderful amenity packages, park packages. So that allowed us to have those instances to create amenities that wouldn't easily be realized or forced upon a developer if they were just to come in here with a straight commercial or industrial zoning. We talked about tree preservation. That is something that we're doing, stretching along this whole area. But if this were to come in piecemeal, as Melissa said, anything industrial wouldn't require tree preservation at all. So that's, that was another reason why we wanted to do that and really create a presence with buildings up close to the road. That was another reason, internally only. Remember, I told you that we kept the typical setbacks along Green Oaks and Holly Springs Road, Holly Springs New Hill Road rather, but we wanted to lessen the setbacks to get buildings up close to the road to create an urban streetscape, to create an innovation village, and currently the UDO does not allow that.
Okay. Any other questions from the planning board? Trying to move this along a little bit, sorry to say.
The only other comment I had was this new designation in the comprehensive plan, which you're trying to mirror, calls for a grid network of walkable streets, and this representative of that vision. I happen to grow up in Chicago, and I know what grids are, and so just want to ask that question.
Well, the street layout is about as gridded as we can get in this scenario. And it would be great to have a site that didn't have any exterior constraints that limit us. Holly Springs New Hill Road is a DOT road. We're only going to get so many access points along there, and they have to be separated out by a certain distance. We've got several fingers of wetlands and buffers that extend up through the site that we can't just cross anytime we want to. And so it's not like a gridded Chicago block, but given the site that we have and the constraints that we have around it and within it, it's gridded to a point where I think to cut it up anymore, you can start to limit kind of the flexibility you have in parcels. So in my mind, it is gridded to the maximum extent that we think we can do on this site.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the planning board? No? Again, I think the purpose of this, I'm sorry. I think you're just standing up and sitting down, but thank you for that. I think the purpose of this was to, in some cases, ask questions that we don't have an answer for yet. And that's the thing that the purpose of this was, it's coming back to the planning board, as I think you all know, on January 28th. So if there's a question that doesn't have an answer, that's okay. I think that's fine. And there are some things that I want to think that later on that I'm not sure there is an answer tonight, so there might be by that time, and then that process continues on. So I just want to make that mention. So anything else from the planning board? If not, let's zip into the staff. Is there anything? Thank you. Pardon me?
Mayor, you want to open the public hearing?
I want to open for more questions from the staff first. Okay. Okay. I will do that. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with us. It's a big project, as you well know. Did we miss anything now from the staff?
I just have one question that
Sure.
we really didn't get a chance to answer there, which was, I'm still really concerned from the staff perspective and from the development perspective of why we're not looking at fee in lieu along Old Holly Springs Apex Road, because I think that is going to cause us just as many issues as a third lane between, Avent Ferry and New Hill Road there.
Gotcha.
So I think there's some areas that we need to explore there, and I think that even goes more as you start to look at the elementary schools and,
Yeah.
pushing people out towards that new elementary school out towards where the Carolina Springs is going. So
Okay.
I think we got to start looking at some of those road improvements as well as we look at major developments, and we're talking a major project.
Right, and yeah, I'd like to second that in a way. I'm kind of befuddled in a sense that we have a development of this magnitude with 600 residential units. That's over 3,000 trips per day for those units alone. Thousands of employees are going to be working in this complex. Carolina Springs is right up the road, and we aren't any closer to realigning Holly Springs, New Hill Road, and Old Apex. The signal there, the signal at Green Oaks, we're still waiting on thresholds to be tripped, and I'm struggling with that, with huge developments in this area. 12 Oaks is the biggest neighborhood we have in Holly Springs. This is huge. Carolina Springs is huge, and we're still waiting on thresholds. That's concerning, and maybe we need to dive into that a little deeper, because I'm not an engineer, but there's got to be a better answer than a couple widenings and a couple turn lanes to figure out how that intersection can finally get realigned, how we can get signals, at Green Oaks and Holly Springs, New Hill Road. So it's a huge concern for me moving into the next phase of this evaluation.
Anything else with staff?
Just one other quick one for the internal. I know we talked about this a bit, but sidewalks, we talked about this being a pedestrian friendly, but we also need to make sure that obviously Holly Springs, New Hill Road is pedestrian friendly, getting from whether it's 12 Oaks all the way into, the Target complex or the other shopping areas or medical facilities there. I'm a little concerned that, and I don't want to go into specific design, but I think it merits discussion in the future as to how we design or look forward towards bike lanes. There was a bunch of discussion about bike lanes. We didn't get into a great depth discussion internal of how these bike lanes would be here, but I would certainly hope they're internal to the roadway, if you will, not external to that parking area, so that they're more coincident with the walking area rather than the driving area. So what I mean is a separation between vehicular traffic and biking and walking traffic. So, and I think there's something we can certainly explore along Holly Springs, New Hill Road, if we're going to do improvements along there with this development, to make those separated so you don't have vehicles and pedestrians mixed with the bikes. So bikes and pedestrians make a whole lot more sense being mixed together than vehicles and bikes in this type of area.
Thank you. Anything else with staff? Because if not, I want to go to the public hearing that the counselors reminded me we're going to do. Thank you, counselor. At this point in time, we're going to open the public hearing. I'm going to call Ralph Jones. Help me with that. I have Joner, right? Jones. Thank you. Repeat what you just said.
Good evening, Mayor. And
Good evening.
Good evening to the rest of the town council. My name is Ralph Joyner, and I live at 117 East Hickory Avenue. And I came here tonight for a couple of reasons. First, I just want to speak for the landowners over there on the New Road. Most of the original landowners worked long hours to acquire that land, and some making 10 cents to 14 cents a day. My wife's great grandfather.
Excuse me, could you turn the mic towards you a little bit so I can hear. It's
I'm
been a little
sorry.
difficult tonight. No,
My
appreciate it.
wife was one of those individuals that, my wife's great-grandfather was one of those individuals that earned 10 cents to 14 cents a day. And I want to urge the planning board and the town council to approve this project because it represents a significant financial gain for most of the landowners in that area. Also, in 2018, I came down with a kidney stone, and I went to UNC Rex. They couldn't do anything for me. They sent me to Western Wake. They couldn't help me. They sent me back home. They made me wait 2 days to get that kidney stone vibrated out. And I was looking at this project, and I saw these medical facilities, and maybe if we had those, I wouldn't have had to wait 2 days to get that stone vibrated out of my kidney. So that's one reason for urging the town council and the planning board to approve this project. Secondly, I graduated from Fuquay Consolidated High School. It's no longer in existence. It went out of existence in 1970. And I'm the president of the Fuquay Consolidated Alumni Association. And every 2 years, we host a banquet and dance. There is not one hotel facility west of Apex and Cary that can host a banquet of 100 or more people on this side of Wake County. So if we got that hotel, that would represent a big gain for us. We don't have to run to Raleigh, and like we've been doing. We don't have to run to Raleigh and Cary and Durham. We usually go to Sheraton and Durham. We've been out there since 2012. And we love to spend our money right here in Holly Springs. So if you approve this project, we would be more than glad to host our next banquet, which is in 2022 in Holly Springs, North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joyner, thank you, sir.
You are.
Mike Valentine. And again, please repeat your name and address.
Mike Valentine, 305 Morning Oaks Drive, Holly Springs, over in the 12 Oaks section. Christine, thank you for your comment. From their initial plans on 10%, 12% of green survival trees, what's the percent of wetlands that they can't touch? It looks like that's 10%. So they're not doing any additional savings for us. She stated that they presented this to us as an HOA meeting. They did. But the information they told us is different from what they presented today. They stated it would be 1 story along New Hill Road. Now it's 3 to 5. Major concerns, as you guys have reiterated before, driving, parking, going down 500 feet down Green Oaks Parkway for a 3rd lane is just going to congest it more right there. It's not going to move the traffic along. There's not enough parking in here. The residents within 12 Oaks do not want to see a hotel there. The only reason that we see a hotel there is the employees at Sequoias don't use it. The VPs do with their secretaries. They don't have to go back to the trailers out back. There's hotel over across by Walmart, Hampton Inn. I stay at many Hampton Inns when I travel. This one is open. This one has 10 rooms open all week. So there's plenty of hotel rooms over there. Why are we going to put a hotel hidden off of the main drag? If we're going to need a hotel, we need it on 55 somewhere where all the cars are going past and seeing that hotel. We don't need it hidden back. Check my notes. The business on the first, residential above, yes, needed.
Look forward to it. For the Greenway Parkway being that short, anyone who's actually runs or works out, the distance in that is going to be minimum. So what the planning board showed with the connection to other greenways, greatly appreciated. The question on that would be, is it accessible to bikes along with running, or is it just a walking greenway? I spent Monday night in North Hills, had a hard time finding parking, and that was a Monday night. It was 6 o'clock, 6:30. People were supposed to be leaving work. There's no parking. So I want to know how they're assessing restaurant parking, these restaurants and hotels. Where's all this parking coming from? If you really want to incorporate people from 12 Oaks going over there and using these businesses, drive down 12 Oaks in the morning and kids are going to school. You guys need, I don't have one, but you need a crosswalk for golf carts to get over there. They all drive them. So they would take them over. You know, I wouldn't. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. At this point in time, we're going to close the public hearing and ask for further discussion from the board. Anything that we didn't get?
Sure. The only thing I never got the answer to the parking question, but that's fine. We don't need to go into it right now. The only thing I would say is that with this design, specifically within Innovation Village, we're looking for a forward-thinking, progressive employment center as it's described in the character description. The applicant's description specifically talked about attracting younger millennials who are looking for a different style of life. We're looking for biotech, we're looking for IT jobs, we're looking for clean tech jobs. This is a real opportunity to be creative in the ways that we build a park that's sustainable, that institutes green technologies, that preserves trees, as has been discussed a couple of times now, that really looks for business park of the future that's going to attract the type of employees and the type of businesses that are looking for something different. So whether that means, I see a lot of things in there about wall gardens, about rooftop, like green rooftops, and how these things are architectural elements that could be included. I'd like more incentives for those to be on there. Start talking about renewable energies. Is there incentives for putting solar panels on these buildings? Are there incentives for, as Christine said, building buildings to LEED standards so that we have a more sustainable infrastructure to attract those businesses? Because there is a market for that. Those types of businesses are looking for those buildings because it attracts the type of employees that the businesses are trying to attract to our towns. And we're thinking about the type of people who are going to move into this type of development and the type of companies that are going to move into this type of development with those employees. Those are the types of spaces and things they're looking for. So I would just encourage the applicants to be creative with what they're thinking about and what they're requiring of the developers who are going to come in and build this out down the road, and trying to incorporate that into the language of the PUD going forward.
Anything else? You good? At this point?
I would say, just to reiterate, you talk about employment center. What kind of jobs, how much money are these guys going to make? And I know when I met with Mr. Chandler, I talked about 600 units. If we have folks that have more service-oriented jobs, they're going to have to travel in. And so if the developers are thinking about things that we find attractive, some percentage of affordable housing to help support folks to live near where they work, those are the kind of things that are exciting for us to, or for me to hear, and just something to consider, because we have other projects that are looking at a percentage of affordability. And you talked about restaurants and hotels. Those folks can't afford to live near here, so they're going to have to be commuting unless there are some options for them. So to think out of the box, and I think if we want to sell this to the economic development opportunities in the surrounding area, we could use this piece to say, this is it shows how innovative we are and forward thinking, and this is the Holly Springs of the future, and very much the same things that Councilman Wolf talked about. This could be a very exciting project. I think it needs a little bit of changes to bring it to that next level.
Okay. Anything else?
I guess I'll ask a question then. So if we're going to talk about that right now, as we're talking about a rezoning to a PUD, or as Mr. Crandall brought up, doing this via the UDO, if we were to do it based on our current UDO and the current designations that are there aren't going to be any trees that are left here. Developer goes in and raises everything because there's no requirement for any tree preservation at all. So I think the PUD does provide us an opportunity, and I appreciate the developer looking at it from a PUD perspective to provide some level of preservation in this area, because quite honestly, the way this land is designated right now, we could go in here with raised earth and knock down every single tree and be completely legit because it's a business park and it's meant for commercial development. So I appreciate the fact that there is an appreciation for that. And I don't think we can also mix signals with trying to say we're looking at an innovation district here where we're trying to get high-tech jobs, but at the same time, we're trying to make sure we have a bunch of places for low-income workers. I understand we need to have some places for that. I don't think the predominance of what we're looking at for the businesses in here, if we're really trying to get those high-tech, innovative jobs, are going to be those. There are going to be some restaurant workers, some grocery workers, and some other hotel workers potentially here. I think we've got to look at the surrounding areas and where there are other opportunities for us for future development residential-wise, but I'd really like to stay away from the residential here, and I appreciate the fact that we have stayed away from the residential in this development largely because this is an area for commercial development in our town with the business park. So I'm struggling with that when we look at this from a PUD perspective, so I'm trying to figure out what else we would incorporate or ask the developer to incorporate in this PUD that would change that perspective as we look at each one of these individual areas that are going to be developed as we move forward with a developer. So again, the PUD sets up parameters for the zoning, and then we're going to get another bite at the apple on each one of these developments that comes forward in phases, if you will, in the PUD. So as long as they stay within the constraints of the PUD. So right now we're setting the constraints and making sure we do, and, tweaking the margins as those developments come forward for this. So again, I just want to make sure we kind of scope this appropriately. If we're looking at the PUD versus the UDO.
I agree with what you're saying to a point, but when we're talking about having a variety of housing types, or as Councilwoman Kelly talked about, affordable units, I have heard of folks who are working in the business park now in what we would consider high-tech jobs, but cannot find affordable housing in Holly Springs.
Sure.
So there are jobs where, with the housing market what it is, with home prices what it is, you can have market rate housing, having people fill these jobs that we are trying to attract and still not be able to afford to live here. So workforce housing would be great because it gives those professionals who are just coming out of school, who maybe have some student loan debt, or are trying to find those jobs an opportunity to live and work here. But mostly what we're looking for is variety for people who are looking for different points in their life, so that this can be a fully functioning, diverse center, I think.
Just to comment to that, I think that it would be inappropriate if I didn't say that we are working on affordable housing, workforce housing. We've been to many meetings. We don't have all the answers yet, but I think we have a meeting scheduled for next month. And we're going to try to put all the pieces together and come up with an answer to a very good question. Where is affordable housing? I spent 2 days in Raleigh I guess about a year ago, and 4 hours were spent with definition of what is affordable housing. We got all done with all the different options that came up at that meeting. There was like 200 people there. You know what the answer was? We're going to call it affordable housing. So I don't know what the answer is yet, but we're working on that. So I just want to add that to the pot. Anything else, anything before the motion?
I don't think we can escape the fact that this is a business park and has been a business park for a long time. And, this board and previous boards have for a long time maintained that it's a business park. And when this proposal first came to the TRC, however many months ago it was 800 to 1,000-ish residential units. And from feedback from the TRC and each one of the council members that have met with the team since then, we've got down to this number of 600, right, which in the concept of a PUD submission makes this unique and different than what we would otherwise find in the business park. So I think for me, I need to stay grounded in the fact that at the end of the day, it's an employment generation center. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to solve problems that don't necessarily exist by creating different housing types and opportunities. Yes, it's an opportunity to be innovative. It's an opportunity to be unique, but I think we need to stay focused on what we're trying to do in the business park and not overcloud that with, you know, how much housing can we pull in here and who's going to be able to live in these different units. So for me, I think I want to stay grounded in how can we generate employment? How can we focus on balancing that tax base with some more commercial growth, well balanced with the right amount of residential to make this unique enough to bring those millennials and younger professionals into Holly Springs that we're desiring to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page there.
Anything else? I think we're ready for a motion. Please.
Mr. Mayor, if I could real quickly, I just want to reiterate there's a lot of the public that's stuck with us through a couple hours of this one. So just to reiterate the process on this, for those that are curious, we're not actually going to vote on this proposal tonight. It's going to be referred to the planning board. They're going to take it up January 28th, and then it's going to come back to the town council probably sometime in February, depending any tweaks, where we'll then actually take a formal vote on this. So there's still another month or so to go on this process. I just want to make sure everybody in the public knew what we were embarking on over the next couple of months to get through this evaluation.
And that's again why I said that there's a lot of information that came in tonight, a lot of different people, a lot of different things. And that was the purpose of the meeting in the first place, was to give further information to this project for the planning board to look at and then come back on the 28th and have their meeting, and then we're meeting in probably February, whatever that is. Yeah.
Mayor and Council, just a note on that motion. If you would remove the January 28th date from that, we would ask you to forward it to planning board, but based on the addition of developer agreement for further consideration, that date will be pushed back so that the developer agreement can can go to planning board, which is something new, so that they have that opportunity to see that language as well. So based on that, our expectation is that it would need to be pushed off.
Do you have any idea?
I believe currently we are looking at the February date, although that has not been confirmed at this time.
Can we just alter it to say review and recommendation at a future scheduled meeting?
Be determined.
I'm happy to make a motion then. Motion to forward plan unit development number 19-PUD-01 for Green Oaks West to the Holly Springs Planning Board for review and recommendation at a future planned scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. And again, thank you everyone for participating in this. And we're going to go to our last item is agenda item 9A, consent agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, just a reminder, we did pull 9H from the consent agenda to new business. So that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda, excluding 9H.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Should go to 9H now, Mr. Mayor. Councilman McGrath requested that we pull that for a couple clarifying questions from staff.
Go to that now.
Yep.
Can you pull back nine, which one was it?
9H, it was the last
9H?
one.
Yeah.
Sent.
Linda, do you have that separately?
I didn't know until.
Okay.
Fairly simple question.
Okay, let's just go with it.
The question for this one is really just fair market rent versus what we're actually asking for rent at the co-working station for this extension. So I don't have a great perspective of, fair market rent. I know we've got a bunch of places that are for rent right across the street in Town Hall Commons that are being filled up. And so I'm just.
Fair question. Let me see close to my notes here, but I believe the co-working station is classified as the Class C office space, and the rate that we've been charging them was really, when it was established 3 years ago, was meant to be incentivized rate to generate and help them out, fill out the space to incubate the businesses, as what's happening right now. And then you are, through the points that we were making in the agenda item, that process was delayed, partially as we feel it was
our, not fault, but our request for some more things to be done. I have requested some comparison rates, and it's really hard because we don't have that much office space. So really what I have is, I would not say it's scientific, it's not as accurate. Again, nothing much to compare in the downtown Holly Springs that is classified as Class A, Class C office space. But I believe that the.
Arena. In my opinion, from looking at appraisals, that type of, we've got about 3,000 usable square feet there, at about $18 a foot would be about a $4,500 a month rental, and we're at 3,000. So it's probably, I think it's definitely sub fair market, but it's not way beyond the pale. There's a couple other things that we're doing though. Also, we're paying the power bill. We've been doing that for the term of the lease. They are responsible for their own water bill. So, it's probably pretty favorably below market rate.
And you're absolutely right, John. It is $18 per, $18,000 per quarter, which is about that.
Yeah, and that was my question and my assessment. It was a little bit low, and so I just didn't know if it was fair to, ask for a little bit more for this renewal portion. I mean, I understand that there's probably a little bit of leeway since some of that is, negotiated because of some of the delays in getting them into their ultimate desired location. But I just figured it was worth asking the question.
I don't know if you recall when we renewed this lease last time, I had the same concerns, and I was worried about, okay, we'll give them a break, now we're doing it again. This is an opportunity for us to really balance out, money coming in, and I think the world of them, and I think it's great, and I want them to invest in our downtown, but at the end of the day, we also have to get fair market value with quantifying the difference, and I had problems then, similar to what you brought up. Just try to be fair for our income.
I do want to note that since the last year, we did go up about 25% in the asking price. So we are going back to the highest rate that they've ever paid.
Right.
Do we want to talk further on 9C? Anything left?
No.
Just the motion.
I guess, well, originally it had two motions.
9H.
Oh, 9H, I'm sorry. In 9H. You have it?
Yeah.
Go right ahead. You're in charge.
I'll make the motion to approve the co-working station agreement addendum with Lighthouse Recruiting LLC.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the confusion. Now, item number 10, other business. I will tell you my crosswalk safety story again. I am seeing people pushing the button. I'm so excited. And they are too, because it's working, especially out front. Traffic out front is less than it was as far as 110 miles an hour. And I think we've made some progress there, Kendra. But anyway, I still see occasionally, and it kills me, I still see occasionally people wanting to cross the street right up front, and they stand, the button's right here, and they stand and wait, and they stand and wait. And I want to yell from the balcony, push the button.
We need an intercom for you.
Yeah, give me one of those horns, like that. That's number one. Number two, we still have a speeding issue. We always will. Let's try to work on slowing down a little bit. And the last point I want to make is the landfill was brought up tonight. I hesitate to get too specific on this, but there has been some things happening recently that may see the light of day. This is something we have not given up on. We've been working on it for 18 or 20 years now, and we're going to continue to work on it, and maybe we're going to get an answer sooner or later. So don't give up the ship on the landfill. Other business, council.
Two things from my side. Firstly, to everyone on town staff, there's some fire department folks, police department, parks people. Saw Councilwoman Kelly out there early volunteering at the Sugly Sweater, setting up and helping out. It was a great event, so thanks to all the staff that had a hand in that, the Meg Smile Foundation and also Zach's Toy Chest for the benefiting charities right here in Holly Springs. Congratulations to Councilman Wolf, who got first place in our age division in the race.
Is that right?
I finished the race and I'm still alive, and I guess it was a respectable time, so I'll take that.
The key to winning a race is running faster than everybody else.
Or something like that, right?
Or kicking them in the knee.
Second thing, I had a great meeting last night with a Cub Scout den from Pack 356, one of the Arrow of Light dens. It's getting ready to cross over to Boy Scouts. It's always great getting questions from grade school individuals on town happenings and trying to explain zonings and budget processes, but it was very enjoyable. And I have their second den on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that.
Good for you. Others?
I had a couple things. One, Randy, when Christine Warloss was speaking at the beginning, and she mentioned about special events at some of the daycares, it just spurred an idea, especially after talking with Cassie Hack this week about there's more formality with some of the things the towns are doing to be more organized. Is there a way that we could know, like for Mother's Day, if there are some pockets of congestion opportunity? Like if we know ahead, or let people say, you know, if you're a daycare, you know you're going to have a teacher tea or parent tea, let us know, and then maybe we have an officer out there to assist. Like there are things we can do to maybe participate more in things that we know will might have caused traffic issues.
Right, and with them or any other group, you know, it is very helpful knowing when groups or organizations are going to have large events, and we'll always when we're notified, try to at least support in terms of
Right.
notifying the community and whatnot. So we do have a relationship with the school, and typically we oftentimes do get notifications, and sometimes it doesn't always occur, but we
Right.
have that relationship. But we'll certainly reach out and see if there's some opportunities on that.
Okay. And then thank you for mentioning the landfill. Yes, that was definitely over the holidays. The folks shopping at Target was a big issue,
bad.
and it's really bad. And I'm anxious to hear what you have to share, because I know that the questions I'm getting are, there was a new system in place, is that working? If it's not, what are we going to do? So we definitely.
Well, I can't go into details yet. I appreciate the question. All I can say is that for the first time ever, I have some feelings we may be on the right track.
Well, that makes me.
And I'll keep you posted, believe me.
All right. And then I did want to mention that we do have the 6th annual Unity Weekend coming up in January that the town is working with our Holly Springs MLK group on. And Cassie's going to help us get some of the information out. But it is multiple of events. There's a free breakfast on Saturday for the entire community. There's the annual walk that is just a wonderful thing to see, from the food line to the cultural center, and then an event at the cultural center as well. So I think what a great opportunity to show our town comes together around a great event.
Okay. Anything else?
A couple of things. First, I want to thank my fellow council members for holding down the fort last meeting. I was not able to make it due to some knee surgery, so I want to echo what Mr. Congleton and Mr. Joyner had mentioned earlier, in that growth can be pretty good and have some benefits. I was able to have that surgery here in Holly Springs and do the physical therapy here as well. That is the convenience and ease in my daily life of having that here was terrific. And I'm glad you didn't table everything from last meeting and moved it forward.
We tried.
Also,
I thought we did.
At least one, I think, right? Also, I would like to request in the upcoming work session some discussion around sustainability. We've had some emails around that, so I think a level set of what sustainability is, what we can do about it, and if that needs to be addressed further at the council retreat, if we could have that done, I'd appreciate that.
So we'd be happy to. I think that's the pleasure of the council. And to that point, I mean, in anticipation of your retreat, we do have one workshop in February. That's the week or two before. So that would be an opportunity to tee that up from conceptual and framework standpoint that we have to do in the retreat.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Billson, for bringing that up. That's actually what I was going to ask for as well. The email you're talking about, of course, is something to discuss. I've been getting inundated with sustainability, I'll call them enthusiasts, who have all sorts of ideas. One that really stood out to me was this simple recycling textile program, which they've been pulling in Raleigh, Cary, Apex, and I think in Morrisville now, where the town partners with a private partner who will do clothes and stuffed animals recycling curbside, kind of in partnership with waste management services. So that, along with, looking into the Green Oaks West HUD, I had a lot of questions, and thank you to all staff involved who got me those answers. I had a lot of what I called the new guy questions, which I'm sure have been answered many times before, but it was really helpful for me. And some of those that I definitely had questions on, which I think can be addressed in a workshop or a retreat, are probably both are stream buffers and keeping them uniform, how we get there, and then obviously some changes to how we can enforce our tree preservation ordinance, which I think my impression is that it changed since when those ordinances were put into place, and do we need to adjust them in light of new laws that prohibit how we can enforce them. So all these things, a good summary of where we are on some of these issues, and then a good mapping session on where we want to focus our resources moving forward, whether that's through our UDO process or making investments in the future budgets. I think that would be a good use of a February workshop for sure.
Okay.
First, just want to thank everybody who took the time over the holidays to to be out there taking care of our town. A lot of folks in the town obviously had to work over the holidays, so many of us got to enjoy the holidays. A lot of people had to work, so thanks to all of them who kept the town running and kept us from having to have some major session or big connection going on in the town, whether that's Holly Springs Fire Department or Police Department, keeping us all safe. So I certainly appreciate all the efforts over the holidays to do that and keep that off of anybody else. Hopefully, we can continue to not have 2020 hindsight, but this year have 2020 foresight for 2020 for all of us. Thanks, Aaron.
Got it.
And part of that, looking forward at things and trying to be proactive. I took an opportunity from one of the meetings we had last month with the Wake Habitat to reach out to them and to try and set up a meeting. So I know that's being organized with Randy, with our town, to try and set up opportunities for us to understand how we can really impact some more venues of affordable housing in our community by partnering with some of these other entities such as Wake Habitat or others that are out there that provide us other opportunities to do that, rather than trying to coerce a developer to give us options inside of the development. So that's all I have.
Sean, you're dating yourself. I have not heard the word conniption for about 35 years. So
I might be slightly.
I know what that is. I know what that is.
How about kerfuffle?
I invented that term.
Maybe a year older than that.
Yeah, I am older, no question. Anybody else? All set? Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly not to outdo Councilmember McGrath, but I'd love to tell you what 2020 is going to look like, but I don't have 2020 vision. I do have one item for you tonight, and that is a really a positive thing. And December 17th, of your last meeting there in December, you had a report from our police department about crime stats, and we heard some really great and encouraging components around that. Just today, Home Snacks, which is a company that does look at crime stats across the state, they came out today and released that Holly Springs is the #1 safest community in North Carolina, again. And so that's based off of FBI violent and property crime. So really great work, and I think you heard that back in December 17th, and it was solidified with that recognition that the town received, our community received today. So just want to recognize that. That's it for tonight.
That's it. Thanks, sir. Counselor? The answer is no.
Motion
Do I hear
to
a motion?
Second.
Didn't hear.
I had a motion to adjourn.
Hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.